he is 100% worth it.
He takes it to another level. Oh my God, I just fell in love with it.
Thanks so much, Jay.
Blew my mind. And it worked. I wanted to buy my thing.
Jay is, I would say, the Yoda of sales calls, man.
Just talking to Jay, he was so good at just taking what it is, seeing the opportunity and the value and the real reason we are making it.
Talk to Jay, because he got it. He can definitely help you out.
Talk to Jay. You're going to get a lot. You're going to gain a lot.
I would absolutely recommend him for any position that you have.
Jay's definitely the guy.
Give him the chance, give him the opportunity. You won't regret it.
He's good at what he does, so I highly recommend him, and I would book him before he is fully booked out.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Sales Ninja Show. Today's guest has a story I think a lot of us can actually relate to. Someone who's been through the sales grind, learned the hard way, and now has an incredible mission to bring more integrity and a little more elegance to the sales game. Our guest started hustling in sales at just the early age of 20 years old, trying her hand at everything from selling knives to ink toners and even credit card services. But like so many of us, it took her a while to find her stride. And 10 years later, she found her passion and hit her breakthrough, helping people achieve their potential through a sales process that doesn't just work, but feels right. And the results? In her first 6 months with a startup, she brought in $1 million, then helped grow that company to $10 million in just 3 years, personally contributing to over $4 million in sales. But what's most impressive is that she didn't just stick to a numbers game. She's actually developed a people-centered approach that keeps things real, personal, and aligned with values. Since then, she's coached some of the biggest names in the coaching space like Kelly Roach, Jerisha Hawk, and Shelly Ryuta, and continues to make a difference. Today, she's here to share her insights on consultative selling, the power of empathetic listening, and how to bring more fulfillment to the sales process. So I'm really excited for this conversation, and I think you'll be too. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming the inspiring, the unstoppable Katy Hoagland. Hey, Katy, how you doing?
Hey, Jay, what an intro. High energy. I just love it. Thanks for having me.
And you know, as I was saying your name, I was like, I didn't actually figure out how to say your last name.
That's fine. It could just be Coach Katy, but last name is Hoagland. Hoagland.
Okay, so it sounds similar to what I said. Today, we're going to be talking about how to unlock more fulfillment in sales with Katy. So before we jump into that, I just found new news that you're engaged to be married. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And you have a bonus. So you want to share some of that good news with us?
Yeah. So you talk about my bonus in terms of my offer?
That's later, but your bonus family.
So yes, in this engagement, I do have 2 bonus children, which are absolutely amazing. And we're going to be shooting for one on our own, hopefully next year. Even though I'm up in age, you know, we're going to try.
That's always, you never know. God is the giver of all gifts. So
100%. 100%.
So tell me, like, when you were starting up, because you started sales at just the young age of 20, are you talking Cutco knives and ink toners and all that kind of stuff? Tell us more about that, journey.
Yeah. So I think that the entrepreneurial bug is just deep rooted in me for some reason. My family maybe brought me up to be this way. And I've just always thought that, yeah, I could sell anything. Sure. Why not? And so I've tried everything. I was going door to door selling vacuum cleaners at one point in time.
Wow, that's tough.
As I was going to college, trying to get by and make some money. I didn't want to have any ceilings on what I could do. I knew I had a crazy work ethic and I knew I was going to work harder than anyone else. So why not? I'm going to just go for it. And I was always sold on the big picture goal. If you do this amount of sales, you can accomplish that. And I always knew, like, I can do that. I have what it takes, right? But I kind of sucked at all of those things.
Really?
It wasn't until I found something that was in pure alignment with my values, with my mission, with my purpose as a human being, to where I really found more ease and flow and success in sales. So I was kind of climbing this uphill battle, trying everything, you know, the Cutco knives, which I cut myself a few times, still highly recommend them. Vacuum cleaners, ink toners, all throughout this decade of just trying. And, you know, it was in 2014 when I realized I'm kind of tired of being this hamster on a wheel in life and trying the same things. And I was living in Ohio. Canton, Ohio is where I grew up. And I decided, you know, I'm going to make a big leap and I'm going to move to Los Angeles. I'm going to really take this sales thing seriously and just swim with the big sharks and learn as much as I can. I wanted to be the least intelligent person in the room when it came to sales. And I wanted to surround myself with people that just knew a lot more than I did and just be a sponge. So I did it. I just kind of moved out of my apartment, sold a lot of my things, packed up my Jeep, and asked my mom if she wanted to go on a little road trip. And then I'd fly her back when we got there. And we took this road trip and I moved to Los Angeles with $1,500 to my name, mind you.
Wow.
A little cuckoo pants, but I've always been overly ambitious and overly confident in my abilities. I did move out to California with 3 interviews for sales jobs. And actually got an offer for 2 of them and accepted one of them, even though I had to get on the one-on-one at 8 a.m. traffic and drive like almost 2 hours to get there.
Whoa.
You know, I figured this would be good exposure to really learn more about sales and just dive right in. So yes, tried all of the things. So if anyone listening feels like they're maybe not good at sales, or maybe they're jumping into the entrepreneurial world and starting to sell something that they're really passionate about, but they don't really feel confident in their sales abilities, I will challenge you to say, I'm just not good at sales yet. Because it's, you know, it's not an end game. There's no end point there. Mastery is always in process. So you may just need to create more alignment in your sales process, which is what we're going to talk about today, so that it feels more joyful and it eliminates any resistance there. Because I think alignment has a lot to do with it, in alignment with your passion and your purpose.
Love it. Love it. So tell us some of the hardships. Like you said in the beginning, you weren't as savvy or good at sales. I can imagine when you're selling knives, ink toners, and or vacuums door to door, what were some of the stories, if you have one that was like, man, I don't know if I'm going to keep doing this? And as a flip side, as a rebound, what are the things that the important lessons that you learned that you bring today from those door to door knocking days?
Yeah, so I think I'll start with the big lesson and reverse engineer that. So I think resilience is the big lesson, and being open-minded and being resilient to when those things don't work, and accepting that rejection is the biggest part of the sales game. And so I think that's what it taught me, to just accept the rejection, because I got a lot of that. And I kind of built up this thick skin and an emotional detachment from the rejection, because all of that rejection, as we know in sales, just gets us closer to a yes. So I think at first it was hard. No one wants to be rejected when they're putting all of their effort, they're exhausted, they're putting all of their time into doing this. But the more and more it happens, the more at bats you have, just like sales conversations, the better that you get at rejection, just like the better that you get at sales calls. So I realized that, and I wanted to just continue going after it no matter what. If I got a rejection, I was perfectly fine with that. So I think letting go of the fear of losing a sale really helped me develop that thick skin and develop a lot of resilience.
Amazing. And what story comes to your mind of, you know, the straw that almost broke the camel's back?
So there's one story in particular when I was selling the vacuum cleaners. Oh gosh, this is so long ago. But I would literally go into people's houses and like show them a demonstration and clean their houses, right? And show them like, oh, you could do this and you could do that. I was like 22, maybe 23 years old. And I was going along with the person that was training me at the time. And he was telling me, yeah, you can do this and you can do that. But I was like, what about cleaning the ceilings? Like, has anyone ever cleaned the ceilings with the attachment? He's like, no one's ever done that. And so I was like, I'm just going to give it a try. What do you guys think about this? And, you know, this couple was like letting me clean their ceilings and all, you know, the little cobwebs that collect in the corner. And I just got this feeling like they're really enjoying this. They really are enjoying me coming into their home and cleaning it kind of for free. They
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
buy a darn thing. Lesson learned, I like to be helpful. I like to be of service, but sometimes you just have to recognize your boundaries and recognize when it's
Mm,
time to walk away from the sale or walk away and do kind of like, thank you, but no, thank you. Lesson
wow,
learned.
that's interesting. So they had a free cleaning, and they, of course, they were smiling because they got a free demo, which
Oh
was like,
yeah.
"Thank you. We don't actually need you anymore because you did the work already for us."
Exactly.
And
No,
setting
when someone's
parameters.
trying to, and I still see it to this day with a lot of the coaches that I coach, they get on sales calls, and because they're coaches and they love serving, they love helping, they're coaching on the calls. And sometimes people leave those sales calls like, that was amazing. Thank you so
Mm,
much.
mm.
Bye-bye. And no sale is made, right? So
Ooh, here's a
you need,
question.
yeah, go ahead.
Because I'm at fault with that too. So because I was
We
a
all
pastor
are.
for 10 years. I was a pastor for 10 years, and I love serving people. And I even say things like, this is not a sales pitch, or it's not like whatever. But at the end of the day, like if they join, that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's been incidences where it was such a good call, I don't actually need to hire you anymore because you've given me all the sales strategies that I need. How do you set parameters in your calls, or teach people how to set parameters in their calls, whether it's with the way that you set aside a certain amount of time? Let's say you have a 30-minute time or 45-minute time frame. There's got to be a certain amount of time for each part, and then not over coaching to the point where they don't need you anymore. What do you recommend?
So I have a specific framework that I teach my clients for mastering the sales conversations. It puts guardrails around each segment of the call. It's a CLOSE framework, and there's steps to each part of it. And in my program, I give call reviews too. I listen to the specific call and I pause. I give call reviews on Zoom. I pause at specific spaces and I say, do this instead of that. You can say this instead of that, to redirect back to that structure of the call. Because the more that we feel that urge to coach and then give in to that urge, we've lost control of the call. And it's no longer a sales call, it's just a free coaching call. So there are ways to drop little seeds of coaching, but then redirect back with open-ended questions so that you're getting a clear diagnosis. You are really wearing the decision-making coach hat instead of the coach hat. So that's what I tell the people that I work with. You have a decision coach hat on during the call, and you're just helping someone make a decision to solve the problem and invest, instead of helping someone actually solve that problem before investing.
So helping them make the decision versus actually like fixing the problem for them, right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Very, very
It's
good.
okay to feel the urge to want to coach, but
Yeah.
again, it goes back to that emotional regulation and knowing how to redirect and get back to that structure. And mastering that structure, it takes time, but it just creates so much more ease in the call, because a lot of people are just winging their calls. Yes, they know they need to build rapport, they need to frame, they need to ask some questions and pitch, overcome objections. But what about the details of each of those parts? What kind of tone do you want to use? What kind of speed do you want to be talking with? How can you show empathy in each phase? So those are the details that I get into in each phase of that call.
Amazing. I like to do a shameless plug for you throughout this podcast to share your 5-day Master Your Sales CLOSE close that you put a replay together for us and our audience. And I want to thank you for that, where you guys can have a specific framework that will frame the sales calls to help them make a decision, like Katy was saying, decision-making hat versus the coaching hat. And instead of fixing and solving their problems where they may not need your services anymore, helping them make that decision. So guys, check it out at masterhighticketsales.kit.com/replays. Is there anything else that you want to say about that 5-day replay as well?
Just if you're someone who's selling a transformative coaching program and your program is valued at least 5,000 or above investment, then those replays are going to be really valuable for you, because it's really tailored to people selling those high ticket transformative coaching programs, because those calls are meant to be transformative and give people a paradigm shift in the way that they're thinking about their lives so that they can be positioned to invest.
Amazing. So you were kind of alluding to the idea of alignment and values and flow. So talk about, because the topic of our podcast is how to unlock more fulfillment in sales. So can you go deeper into that and what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the biggest things I hear from people that reach out to me for help is, I'm sure you hear it too, Jay, is sales is gross. It's a slimy thing. It's salesy. It's not who I am. I'm an expert at what I do, but they just somehow have this belief that people are gonna jump out and just reach out to work with them without any sales conversations. If you have a high ticket offer, that's just not going to happen. It is going to take an in-depth conversation to help people recognize what those blind spots are, or else they're just making decisions, with the same mindset that they've had. So I think alignment is huge. For my personal experience, like I said, when I moved to California and really started to get into sales, I moved on from that job that I had, and I met this young couple that had a startup company, as you mentioned in the intro. And I was one of their first salespeople on the team, ground floor. They had made about $1 million on their own as a couple. And then I started doing some consultative selling for them. And it was for accountants and CPAs to help them grow their own 7-figure firms.
Really?
Now,
Interesting. Okay.
I did not know anything about accounting, about tax planning, none of that. I thought it was boring. I just tried to avoid that like the plague, right? So, but fundamentally, what those individuals were drawn to was they wanted to adopt a mindset of being an entrepreneur, to diving into risk, which if you know your accountant or CPA, they're probably helping you avoid risk at all costs.
That's right. That's right.
So their mindset isn't really that of an entrepreneur. So what I found in speaking with them is really, we can go through the numbers, we can map out projections, we can look at increasing your pricing, making sure your packaging is right, how many calls you need to do every day to scale to that 7-figure mark. We can lay out all the logistics, but fundamentally, no one is going to invest if they don't have the belief in themselves that they can make decisions like an entrepreneur. So my goal was to help them take courageous action and bet on themselves. My goal on those sales calls was never to sell a program, never, because I related to them personally. I had just made a leap from Canton, Ohio to Los Angeles with $1,500 in my bank account. That takes some courageous action and some bold belief in yourself. And that's where I found common ground with them. I took what I was really passionate about, and that experience was one of the best things I could have ever done for myself, eliminating all the clutter, getting rid of things, and just creating experiences, betting on myself, learning about myself, putting myself in really tough situations, and then growing from that, building that confidence. I really, really believed in that. And I was on a personal development journey at the time. So I was constantly trying to get uncomfortable and learn more about myself. And so that's where I found common ground with these people, and the alignment unlocked there, because I was asking them questions to help them realize that their potential was betting on them making this decision right now. And so it was super fulfilling for me, because I got to see them on the other end having a lot of success, coming back, giving me hugs, crying at live events, saying I never would have made this decision to bet on myself if it wasn't for that phone call that I had with you, Katie. It's changed my life in so many ways. Got to meet them in person. It not only changed their lives, but their families' lives, the way they were able to provide for their families. And seeing that come to life, I was completely addicted at that point. Full alignment with my passion and purpose to just help people unlock their true potential and bet on themselves and take courageous action. So I think once we find that alignment, even though I sucked at selling all those other things didn't give me that kind of fulfillment. So I think when you're selling something, you need to be passionate about it. You need to really believe in the outcome that your clients are getting, and seeing them win is what you're after, instead of actually just selling the vehicle to get there.
So, amazing. The idea of even just having a $1 million business, 7-figure business, and then taking it to 10 million in 3 years. One of the things that you specialize, and you have one VIP spot to help a business owner to scale with SOPs and systems. Can you walk us through a high level of what do you do to 10x? I mean, that's a 1 million to 10 million in 3 years.
Yeah, so when I was working with that company, I took the framework that I had developed on the call, and I used that to train our sellers. and our sales team, and recruited some amazing salespeople that I was selling credit card processing with that wanted to dump that just like I did, brought them over to the team. And what was great about people that are in that kind of service, people that work at ADP, paychecks, that are out, you know, building books of residual income, those people have grit, determination, and resilience. They're used to the rejection and they're not afraid to put in the work. So I feel like recruiting people from those companies made a difference too, and just having those connections. They already had the fundamental, you know, elements that I was looking for. And I just led that team along with the, you know, owners of that startup company, and taught that process. Every morning in our team meetings, we would go through wins. I truly believe as a sales leader, morning meetings with your team or anyone selling should be all about mindset and motivation and no numbers. No numbers whatsoever. Numbers can wait till the end of the day. But getting people into their full power at the beginning of the day is really important. So that's what I would do with them, and go through role plays, what worked the day before, what did someone do to close a sale. We would role play that out so everyone else can see what that sounded like, not only what it looked like. And we would practice and just support one another and really digging deep and asking the tough questions. One of the nicknames that that team had for me at the time was, you're gonna laugh at this, but it was Elsa, the ice princess, you know?
What? Really?
You have kids, so I don't know if you have a daughter. You may know.
Yeah, I
Elsa.
do. I have 2 daughters.
So the reason for that is because they said, because sometimes when they were having difficulty on their calls, this was when we had a brick and mortar and we were in person, I would hop on the end of their calls and have them listen in so they could hear how I closed the sale if they weren't kind of making any traction there. And so one of their main takeaways was, wow, you're really like savage. How did you ask that question? And how did you say those things? You must have like ice running through your veins, like Elsa.
Wow.
And
That's
I was
so
like,
funny.
no. I could see how you may be perceiving it like that, but I just had no fear of losing the sale. My main goal was to help someone leave that call with a different perspective on their life, which doesn't take accommodating their comfort zones. You know, it takes asking those tough questions. It takes them holding that loving mirror up. If they said contradicting things in the beginning of the call and now they're giving you an objection that totally contradicts what they said earlier in the call, a lot of salespeople would be afraid to call that out. I wasn't at all. I recognize a contradiction that's not only preventing them from making this investment, it's preventing them from making success in their life and their business. So either way, I'm going to ask that question and I'm going to leave that person with something to think about so that my follow-up close rates are even more, because they're not going to forget about me after that call. So it's elements like that, and leading the team to greatness and staying really grounded in the core principles that we had and alignment with the core values of seeking to understand before being understood, making people feel understood, asking the challenging questions, challenging the status quo, you know, really listening empathetically for those deeper rooted things that they may not be saying, and then ask questions around those things, bring it to light, you know, bring the uncomfortable things to light, and let's have a really robust conversation about those things. Those are all kind of elements that went into the scalability. Of course, we can talk about ads, we can talk about the economic climate at the time. I'm sure there was a lot of different elements going on there, but I think the sales, the heart of it all, had a huge part to do with it, and just being very, very obsessed with mastering those conversations.
Amazing. I can see why you have gotten so much success in, you know, your 20s, to have that grit, that work ethic, the door-to-door knocking and cleaning the cobwebs off the ceilings, to, you know, closing and scaling companies into millions and millions. And the story and the power of the narrative is amazing, because, you know, God has a gift. He gives us faith, and he, you know, he bestows upon us a story or a narrative that we need to play in life. When you're growing and scaling a sales team, you talked about recruiting and leadership. Are you looking for talent and skill, or are you looking for work ethic and experience? So those are kind of 2 options: talent and skill, which can kind of be a mixture of, you know, a God-given talent and a skill that you'd acquire. That's one thing. Or are you looking for more of a person who has that grit, that work ethic, and has that bit of that experience?
It's a good question. I'm looking for someone who has the work ethic, but maybe not the experience. And then someone who has the skill, but maybe not the talent hasn't been, or the talent, but maybe the skill hasn't been developed as much. So kind of one from each side. And I say that because when I started with that startup company, I had zero experience in obviously accounting or CPA, tax, anything. I had zero experience with high ticket consultative selling over the phone. But those owners saw something in me. They knew my story. They saw my grit. They saw my determination. They saw my overly confident self. And they saw that I was willing to challenge the status quo and get uncomfortable and challenge other people to do the same thing. And so they knew something that I didn't know at that time. They knew that that was fundamentally what was needed to close sales, and that they could train me on the accounting stuff, on the projections, on the pricing. All that stuff can be taught, but a lot of it can't be taught. So I look for those things that can't be taught, and I look for someone who is just relentlessly purpose driven. I look for someone who has alignment with the success of the clients on the other side of the sale. So I look for someone who's passionate about what they're selling and why they're selling it. If they're not going to personally invest in the program that they're selling themselves, it's not a good fit. If someone's core values don't align with the company's core values and the way they do something, it's not a good fit. That's why I always say put core values at the very top of any job posting. No one needs to read beyond that if they're not in alignment with that. And so I think it's a little bit of both. That's a great question, but I would say it's a little bit of both. And I really look for more purpose and alignment and energy more so than the experience. I'm willing to bet on someone.
It was a trick question, honestly. I set it up and you did amazing with it. And that leads me to my next question. So I actually agree with what you're saying, because when you have that grit and that work ethic, that kind of the things that can or cannot be taught, but you see it. And then you have this skill, but maybe not talent, because sometimes when you have talent, hard work always outworks talent when talent is not willing to work hard. But when you're in the interview stage and you're growing and scaling and selecting, let's say you don't have your credit card POS people, or you don't have your vacuum cleaning salespeople, and these are pretty much like ice cold interviews. What are the signs of how do you identify the core values? How do you identify the alignment? How do you identify the passion, the confidence, the work ethic, the grit, and in the skill in a interview?
Yeah. One of the questions I love to ask on an interview is, for a sales role specifically, is what are you looking to make by the end of the next 12 months, this next year? And if they say something like, well, I'm looking to earn maybe like 250K with my commissions, and then I listen to what they say after that. If they say anything like, but I'd be okay with 150, or but I'd be okay with anything else, it's not a good fit. I already know it's not going to be a good fit, because that person, if they're willing to settle for less for themselves, then they're going to let other people do the same thing on a sales call. And they're probably willing to like discount prices and just let people settle for less. And so that's kind of an example of seeing that alignment. Someone who is going after what they're going after, no matter what, that's what we're looking for, right? Because those are the type of people that I know that want to enroll into the program. So I look for alignment along those sides, but someone could just be a really great interviewer as well, and then maybe not end up being, that person in the role. So sometimes in the actual application, before I even do an interview, I like to give a DISC assessment and see, are they too high D or too high I? If you're familiar with the DISC assessment.
Yeah.
I like to look at those things first. If someone is a high S or C and very low D and I, it's not even going to be worth an interview. They don't have the skills to follow through with the sales consultative process. So I like to give the DISC assessment. I like to also ask them to upload their written core values along with their resume or their application if they have that. Someone who has those core values written down, that's someone who's purpose driven, right? They know what they are. They've taken the time to write them down, and they're going to be more fitting than someone who hasn't gotten that far yet. So just some of the things that I look for to make the interview process more worth your time and sitting with people. You can also ask someone to do an impromptu role play with you too, and how they would handle an objection, and what kind of tone are they, approaching that with? Are they approaching it with confidence, or did they get a little shaky in their voice, a little more timid at that point? I look for our vocal inflections as well.
Amazing. So I love it. So you say interview process, for those who are listening and or listening to the replay on the podcast, the DISC assessment, written core values, purpose-driven, a potential impromptu sales role play, all amazing things. What are some of the core values and purpose-driven life that you live by?
So seeking to understand before being understood is a top one. If anyone is a Stephen Covey fan, you know what I'm talking about. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He talks about that all the time. So a lot of it is derived from that amazing book. But doing that personally and professionally has to be in total alignment. Robust dialogue is huge. Not being afraid to call people out on inconsistencies is huge. Personally and professionally, if you're, for example, a leader of a sales team and you really want that robust dialogue, you want your team calling you out on inconsistencies with the values, just like you would call them out, and creating a safe space to do that. Some people refer to it as, radical transparency, but it's really just being brutally honest and not being afraid and creating a safe space to call out those inconsistencies. Again, if you can do that in your team, if you can do that in your family life, it's going to be that much easier to do that on your sales calls, call out those inconsistencies. And then just integrity, number one. As we have all seen in the world at some point in time, some people are willing to sell out on things to make money. And if you see any sign of that, I would recommend not doing that. If you're a principle-centered person, not diving into that. So I look for a lot of integrity, like you said, a people-first approach, putting your people number one, investing in your people, and never letting profits get so shiny and such of a priority that you're willing to let cancer stay on your team. People who are just working without any integrity. We see that in business sometimes. And I think if we can eliminate that and really create a culture that is providing bonuses around the sales that your sales team makes, let's look at the KPIs of the success of those clients that they've enrolled. How many of their clients are actually completing with high success rates? And let's go back and reward the sales team for that. You know what I mean? Some salespeople are selling like crazy, and then they have people that enroll in a program with high dropout rates. They have canceling their cards. They don't have success. I don't believe that type of salesperson should really be rewarded for that type of thing, because they're just focused on the enrollment and making the money. Right. So looking at things holistically, looking at the full picture, and really rewarding things that are in alignment with those core values matters as well.
That's interesting. I've not heard that that stance from a sales director management role position, but that makes perfect sense to me, because you're not just, I typically, when I was in high ticket sales, it was like, these are the KPIs, these are the quotas, and then they were awarding the enrollment of how many you can get, and then the bonus was like 100K cash collected. You win a cash, or you win a very like a Louis Vuitton bag, or like, it was like, here's what you get for the behavior. And I was like, I don't know, something. It was my first, just something that was not, it wasn't sitting right with me in terms of alignment and core values. It was more like, how do we drive, how do we scale, how do we just make more money, right? Versus, how do we transform lives? How do we really change and help people? And I think there's a big difference between that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think keeping client success at the heart of everything, it really makes a huge difference.
I love it. Before we come to a close, and we're going to share a couple of links and some resources, I want to ask this one last question. When you're handling sales objections, how do you approach and or teach, whether it's you personally or the people that you teach with founders and closers, when people are like, yeah, the investment seems reasonable, the timing, everything seems clear. When do I need to make a decision? If they're having that kind of objection, they're actually considering it. They're not even like saying, they're not even discounting the price, if that makes sense. They're just like, when do I need to make a decision? Are you on the, we need to make a decision now, end of day? Like, what is your approach? I'm not saying there's a right or wrong. I'm just asking, just out of curiosity.
Yeah, great question. So if someone is following my close consultation framework, they're not going to get that question at the end of the call, because they've already framed the call to say something like, hey, Jay, we're going to talk for 45 minutes today. We're going to dig into your current situation. We're going to dig into your desired goals. We're going to uncover the roadmap on how to bridge any gaps there. I'm going to ask a lot of questions. So the more that you tell me, the better I can, provide you with the right roadmap today. But either way, whether it makes sense to work together or not, we're going to make a decision one way or the other at the end of the call today. Does that sound good? And so that's something that's incorporated into the framing of the call. So if they agree to that, we're making a decision on that call. Either we're going to do this or we're not going to do this. So if they agree to that and then they still ask that question at the end of the call, then I would say something like, totally understand where you're coming from, Jay. At the beginning of the call, you did agree to make a decision either one way or the other. So are you leaning more towards making a decision to do this or not do this today?
Yeah, and then I could say something like, I think I'm leaning to doing it. I just my wife's an accountant, and I need to check with her to make sure this makes sense for us. So when do I need to get back to you?
Yeah, sure. Totally respect that you need to check with your wife. Earlier in the call, we did talk about as well anyone else that you may need to consult with before making a decision today. And you said, no, you're the primary decision maker. So help me understand where you are there and anything that's changed between that point of the call and now.
Okay, that's a good point. That's fair point. I think, yeah, definitely I am the decision maker. At the same time, my wife was telling me before this call, and I should have probably had her on the call or made sure I was on the same page. So my bad. Because we just invested in like 3 other coaches. The one that I'm actually currently working with, I spent a considerable amount of money where I've not only have I not made my ROI, my investment back, I have not made a single dollar. So as an accountant, she's like, okay, before you make the decision when you get on a call with this person, make sure you check with me.
Absolutely. Totally understand where she's coming from. I know accountants pretty well at this point.
Yeah.
So I guess if your wife says, yes, let's do this 100%, would there be anything else that would be preventing you from getting started today on the call?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. And if she says no, would there be anything that would be preventing you from getting started on the call today?
If my wife says no, not to move forward with you guys?
Yes.
And what's your question from there?
Would that still prevent you from getting started on the call today?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I mean,
yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So is she available to speak right now?
She is on a call right now. She's training her team because they just restructured and she's on calls all day. And I could hear her right now. She's on a call.
Okay. Well, you know what, Jay, I'm gonna give this a slide. I know you said you were the main decision maker. You didn't mention that earlier in the call, but I respect that you want to consult with your wife and make sure she's on board, because both of you being on the same page is going to contribute to the success of you having, you reach your goals at the end of this. So what we can do today is just take a $500 deposit to make sure that, it's worth my time to get on the call with you guys again, maybe Friday at the same time. Make sure that you're absolutely serious about doing this, and then we can get on the call together and really go through any concerns. I see this happening a lot where people are investing in coaching programs and unfortunately they're not getting the ROI. So I want to make sure that all of your questions and concerns are addressed on that call on Friday before you get started, because we're going to need you guys to both be 100% full in to make this work. Does that sound good?
So a $500 deposit to get another call with my wife on whatever day and time we agree to. Is that what you're saying?
Yep. And then if you guys decide to move forward, that'll just be put towards the investment. And if you guys decide not to move forward, it'll just be fully refunded. Does that sound good?
Yeah. Sounds
Great.
good.
Great. And so just side note, the reason why I do that is because I see so many people doing so many follow-ups and just wasting time on their calendar. And with people that just ghost them or, not show up or just are too polite to say no on that first call. So sometimes I implement that deposit strategy so that you can make sure that you're using your time wisely.
Yeah. And I think in the worst case scenario, and I mean, I don't know if you call it worst case scenario, some people might feel like, well, now I'm feeling pressured to make a choice, but the non-refundable makes it the easy or the out. But I can see a small percentage saying, well, I don't really want to make that deposit, even though it's refundable. There might be a percentage of that. So, but I do like that. I do like that play. I think that was genius. That was amazing, Katy. I think you are a sales master, and I wanted to ask you to kind of share one of your VIP scalable systems and SOP spots. I think you said you had, I don't know how many spots you had left.
For private, so I take about 2 to 3 private clients on at a time because I am fully invested in them and my community. So I do have one open spot for a private client where I work with them one-on-one. This is specifically for someone who has a high ticket transformative coaching program and they're looking to scale in the next, 1 to 3 years. They do have goals of scaling and growing a sales team. If they are maybe doing the sales themselves and have maybe one other seller, it would still be a good fit. We could work together as a team. But I really help them build the scalable infrastructure from the beginning so that they can thank themselves later, save time. I help them document all of their processes. I do call reviews for them, upload those call reviews into their sales training so that anyone that comes on board knows how to do self-critiques before they ask for critiques of their calls from the CEO, saving the CEO time. So just examples of that, creating really scalable structures from the beginning so that you can hire your team and grow while focusing on the areas of your business that you love most, which is probably not selling. So for anyone that is in that bucket, yes, I think private coaching would be probably the best bet. But for anyone that just really wants to zone in and master the sales conversations, the 12-week accelerator just focuses on that. So you still get call reviews, personalized call reviews. We do role plays. We go through the close framework. We go through the mindset, the sales psychology. Objection prevention is what I call it, because if you follow my framework, you're not going to get those objections. And so you go through all of those things so that you can master and increase your closing rate by at least 15 to 20% in those 12 weeks.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's a good time. And you get to work with me once a week.
Great. So that's called the Elite Closer. Is that what you call it?
Yes. Yes. An Elite Closer.
Okay.
So
awesome.
Yeah, I mean, there's an acronym for that too. I mean, I can share all of this, but integrity driven is a huge part too. So if you're someone who, is just focused on making money and doesn't really care about the outcomes past that, I'm not going to be the right coach for you. If you are someone who does want to bring more integrity and alignment with your core values to your sales process and you really keep client success at the heart of everything, or at least want to, then they would be in full alignment with that.
Awesome. So there you guys have it. You have a 5-day Master Your Sales with the Close Framework replay that Katy has been so generous with. So check that out. It's in the show notes and the comments. And if you're looking to work with her VIP, I guess you can DM her. We'll send all the social links for Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. You can just maybe comment or DM her VIP and just let them know that you heard it from Sales Ninja Show podcast. And anyone looking to do a 12-week Elite Closer cohort, go to masterhighticketselling.com/apply. So I want you to kind of close us out. Is there anything that you've learned from your Chihuahua cash and your hiking trips and, dream wedding with your fiance or watching stand-up comedy on Netflix that can, help us on the journey of that winning mindset?
Yeah, I think just knowing yourself, knowing who your true authentic self is and getting as close to that as possible and bringing that to your everyday life, personally and professionally, because no one is like you. Everyone is individual. So don't try to be like the other seller. You can listen to other sales calls, adopt certain things here and there, but no one is going to sell as good as you sell as your true authentic self. So the more you can not be afraid to step into that authenticity, the better off you're going to be for closing sales, because sales is an energy game. People just want to connect emotionally. They want to feel understood and they want to feel that authenticity from you. So don't be afraid to courageously step into that. Be different, be you, be unique. It's a good thing.
Amazing. So there you guys have it today. Katy just unraveled how to unlock more fulfillment in sales. And as she said earlier, and even as she closed out, not having fear of losing that sale, having 100% confidence, being purpose-driven, aligned with your core values, having that integrity to help transform lives. And when you have those core values and that mindset to listen empathetically and, like you said before, seeking to understand before being understood, you can literally grow and scale your business through sales. So, Katy, thank you so much for who you are and what you offer. You are amazing. And everyone who is tuning in, our goal is to help you to sell more, to give more. If you guys want to know more information on the Sales Ninja program, comment Sales Ninja, and we will get on a call with you to see how we can help you as well. So, Katy, thank you so much for your time. And until the next podcast, we will see you guys later. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Jay.
Bye.